Okay, so today I'm going to share with you Elon Musk's algorithm that he uses to improve any system. Now, I don't care what you think about Elon. You cannot deny that that man is pretty damn good at building systems that do extraordinary things, whether that's, electric vehicles with full self-driving capabilities, that's launching rockets to space and bringing them back down and then catching them with chopsticks, whether that's putting chips into humans' brains that then allow them to operate computers autonomously. And I know he's not the one that's necessarily going and creating the core technologies for each of these. However, he is running these companies. And if you think that doesn't mean that he is not contributing in a meaningful way, then you just simply do not understand what's going on there. Anywho, here's the algorithm that he uses. And in particular, I want to focus on the very first question that he uses, or the very first part of this algorithm. So the very first one is to question every requirement. Question every requirement. Now, this is where we're going to spend the majority of today's episode, because this one is so critical to making sure we're solving the right problems in the right way, that if you did nothing else but focused 80% of your energy on this, and then everything that follows would by nature improve. And so this is why people say a problem well defined is half solved. So number one is just question every requirement. My favorite story of this comes from Taiichi Ohno, who is the father of TPS, or the Toyota Production System. I learned a lot about Toyota production because when we were building Escape Climbing, that's a manufacturing environment, and the Toyota way is like the gold standard for manufacturing because they do things so differently than the rest of the world. And so it really set the standard for how to operate within a manufacturing environment. And one of the apocryphal stories that Taiichi Ohno would tell is this idea of going to the manufacturing floor and observing the activities that people are conducting, and then looking at those activities and asking yourself, why do we do it that way? Is there another way that we could be doing it? And so he went down to the manufacturing floor one day, as he was prone to do, and he was watching this individual, and this individual would get this part, and he would take his soldering iron and he would leave 3 little dollops of solder, and then he would stick it to this other piece and he'd move it on. He'd do the next one, he'd go 3 dots, stick it on, go on. 3 dots, stick it on, go on. And Taiichi just watched this guy do this for like, I don't know, an hour, let's say. I actually have no idea. Maybe he just watched it one time. Maybe he watched it for 5 hours. Anyways, he watches this guy and he has a question. He goes, why do you do 3 dots? Why not 2? Why not 4? And the guy says, well, it's just the way we've always done it. It's just the way I was trained to do it. So Taiichi he starts asking around, and nobody can come up with a good answer. Like all the answers are just that. This is the way that we've always been doing it. And so he goes, okay, let's do a batch run. Let's test this. What would it look like if we only did 2 dots of soldering? And they do 2 dots, boom, no measurable difference. 2 dots is just as effective as 3 dots. Interesting. What if we do 1 dot? Well, we do 1 dot, it's not enough. They're breaking. Now we have increased errors, decrease of our quality control, right? So 2 dots is no different than 3 dots, but there is a difference at 1 dot. So what if we change this entire process? How many of these objects are we doing in a day, in a week, in a month, in a year, right? Hundreds of thousands, if not millions of these items going through. And now we've reduced the manufacturing time by 1/3, because instead of 3 dots, now it's just 2 dots. Not only that, but we've reduced the amount of material that we're using to combine these things. And it started because he questioned the requirement. Now, I used the same principle at Escape Climbing back in 2016 when we sat down with our best-selling product, the Power Piston. These are just wooden dowels with a little eye bolt sitting in the top of them that you can dangle from carabiners and some rope, right? And you can dangle from them. So if you've ever seen an American Ninja Warrior, these products are like super popular in those events. And so I sat down and I said, okay, we sell hundreds of thousands of dollars of these products every single year, and we pump these things out. The current manufacturing time for this item is around 2 minutes and 25 seconds. So I sat down and I said, how can we bring that under a minute? Because if we could get this under a minute, we've effectively reduced one of our largest cogs, our cost of good there, which is the time the human is spending on the activity. So I sat down, I watched the guy doing the activity, and there was all sorts of waste in the process. He was going here, and then he was going there. He was coming over here. He was doing this, and so we rearranged the whole cell. But there was one change in particular that transformed that product, and it reduced our cost of goods produced by like over 40%. One simple tweak. And that simple tweak was the process started with this wooden dowel that was 18 inches long. The individual would take that dowel off of the rack. He would go to the saw and then he would chop it in two. And then he would go on to the rest of the process, which was to sand the bottom of it to reduce any burring. He would drill a hole in the top, put the eye bolt in with some glue. He would brand the front of it, and then the product was good to go. But I got to wondering, why do we take this 18-inch dowel and chop it into two? That makes sense, right? Like one dowel is now two products, right? Two 9-inch power pistons. And I went to my partner, I said, why do you do it that way? And he goes, well, just, it was the quickest. We just had one, now chop it in once, and now you're good to go. That's one power piston. And I go, is there any functional improvement to that product being 9 inches long versus, let's say, 6 inches long? If we made it 3 inches shorter, would it change the product meaningfully? And the thing with the power piston is it was designed to be held in one hand. It wasn't really designed to be held in two hands. At 9 inches, it was like one hand and a little bit of the second hand. Nobody really used it in that way. And so we went back to the drawing board and we said, okay, what if instead of just chopping that dowel in half, what if we chopped it into thirds? Each dowel, each power piston is now 6 inches long. So for each dowel, we were getting an entirely extra power piston out of it with no decrease to functionality of the product itself. Well, turns out nobody cared that the product was 3 inches shorter. So we had been making this product longer than it needed to be, using our dowel less effectively than we could have been. So effectively now, for our raw materials coming in, we were getting 33% more product out of it. It was crazy the amount of downstream effects. Like when you think about making, hundreds of thousands of these, you go, oh, that's massive savings, right? So that whole process was only made possible because we looked at the system and said, why is it that way? We questioned the requirement. Does it have to be 9 inches? Or was that just a relic of something that happened in the past through some arbitrary decision that had been made at that point, right? Maybe it no longer is relevant. Maybe there's now a better way to be doing the thing. So that is how we use that one particular process of questioning every requirement. But that is such a good question to ask in your business because there's so much inertia that kind of accretes over time as your team builds, as systems start to calcify, they become written in stone rather than a living document that's meant to be updated frequently. People come in, they get trained on the thing like a monkey, just, told, push this button, then do this and pull the lever, right? And people just replicate what's been given to them rather than asking, well, what's the point of this? And if you've ever worked for a really big organization, a big company, you've no doubt ran into this very experience where you're like, I'm a barista, I'm working the front line. Why do I do it this way? When I'm making my coffee, they make me do this and this and this. It's like that one step is completely unnecessary. And so what ends up happening is if you're that barista, you're kind of like, you have the initiative, you start to change it, or you go to your manager and you try to tell him like, hey, this process is dumb, like doesn't make any sense. And what usually happens in those big bureaucratic organizations is they tell you, it is what it is. It's above my pay grade. Do it like this. This is what corporate tells us to do, right? It is the way that we've always done it. And so keep doing it that way, even though there's a waste in the system. And so a lot of the employee genius that these big organizations have goes completely unused because they have these ideas to change and improve a system, but there's so much inertia, so much organizational inertia that they can't actually make the changes. You as the founder, though, have a very special power, which is that you can come in at any point to any system, any process, any department, and you can say, the way that you've done it in the past is no longer relevant. Stop doing it immediately and make it better. You would be amazed at how much better you could make everything in your business if you went to your frontline workers and said, hey, what do what do you see about what you're doing right now that's completely stupid and doesn't make any sense? My guess is pretty good that people will come to you and say, well, I actually do this and this and this, and it doesn't make any sense. I don't know why I do it this way. It's just how it's always been. But that's where you can get some of the best process improvements, is from the people actually doing the thing. So that is step one of Musk's algorithm, which is to question every requirement. There's 4 other parts to this algorithm. I'll fly through them real quickly, but really the meat of this that I wanted to talk about was the questioning every requirement, because that right there, you can run pretty far down the wrong path solving a problem that in hindsight never needed to be solved, simply because you never stopped to question the requirement. So that's number 1. Number 2 is to delete any part of the process that you possibly can. So simplifying, deleting, and you'll find there's a lot of extraneous parts of the equation typically. In the example of the power piston, there was countless examples of where there would be waste accrued in the system that then somebody would go and clean up mid-task rather than completing the entire batch. And it's like, wait, why are you doing that? It's like, well, because I was told to always keep my workplace clean. And it's like, okay, well, the cleanliness can wait until the end of the process rather than cleaning every time between, right? So delete any part of the process that you possibly can. Number 3, simplify and then optimize. So you simplify it before you try to optimize it. Do not try to go and optimize a complex system until you've first reduced every extraneous part of the system. Otherwise, you're building upon a fragile foundation. And the more complexity that there is in a system, the more breakage points there are. So make things as simple as possible. 4 is accelerate cycle times. This is something that we talk about in other podcasts, which is you can increase your productivity simply by reducing the amount of time you give yourself to do the task, right? This is the reverse of Parkinson's law. Work expands to fill the time allotted. So if you can reduce the time that you allot for an activity, you're going to get more things done. This is why we say it's important that you focus on getting things done by end of day rather than end of week. End of hour is even better, right? But accelerating cycle times is a powerful way of getting that flywheel going. And then finally, last step of Musk's algorithm is to automate. But you do not automate before you've done the previous steps. Otherwise, you're automating a complex, redundant, unoptimized system that might be solving the wrong problem to begin with. And that's a critical mistake that we often make, is we jump to the automation or the delegation far too soon. And then later we wonder why the thing is broken beyond any kind of repair. It's because it was a shitty system to begin with. So that is Musk's algorithm. But the very first part of that, I want you to focus on this week, which is question every requirement. Everything that you do in your business, ask yourself, why do I do it this way? Do I even need to do it this way? Do I even need to do this? Like, that's a great question to ask. So, like, is this really even necessary? Ask that question. You'll be surprised at how much you're doing right now is completely unnecessary. You don't even need to find a better way to do it. You just need to stop doing it. So that's going to do it for me, guys and gals. I appreciate the hell out of you. See you in the next episode.